Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, college football season is rolling on. We are now in week 6, which is crazy because we're like 40% of the way done with the regular season, which is just a wild thought to me. It feels like it just started, but also kind of feels like it's going on a while. It's kind of this weird juxtaposition. But anyway, week 6 is here. We're in conference play. We got a lot of big time games, and we're going to break down the DraftKings main slate, all 12 games, tell you what you can expect from each game, as well as who needs to be in or out of your DFS lineups, as well as how to attack parlays or player props or bets here on this slate. And if you're just a fan of college football, hopefully we got a little something for you as well, because we're going to talk about college football games. Now, a little programming note. So the live show this week that we normally do, where we really deep dive strategy and kind of the finer points of playing college football DFS, we're moving that to Friday this week. My co-host Zach was able to do a Friday night show, which worked out better for me. So we're going to be doing the live show on Friday around 9:30 to 10 Eastern time. The high school that I teach at is having their homecoming football game, and so I'm going to be attending that, and hopefully we'll be back by 9:30. With the kids down and in bed and able to get the show started. But if not, that's why I'm saying 9:30 to 10. But if you're subscribed to the channel, you'll know exactly when we get started. And then also, if you're subscribed to the channel, you'll be here for the rest of our college football content all the rest of the season long. I am not going to promise that I'm going to be able to have every single slate for you guys. I promise I'm going to get as many of them as I can. I still plan on doing the Saturday night slate for this week. Plan on that coming out tomorrow. So, make sure you are around for that. And if you're subscribed, you'll know when that video drops. Now, like I said, I can't promise every single slate, but I'm going to get to as many of them as I can. My busy season has started. I've mentioned here on the podcast before, but I'm a high school teacher. I coach 2 sports in my high school. I coach girls flag football as well as varsity boys basketball. So we're now in the part of the year where my sports are starting. So my time is going to get a little condensed. But the good news is that we have actionable data and sample sizes for these teams, which makes researching a little bit easier. So that's kind of the give and take when we get to this part of the year. Anyway, let's go ahead now. We got 12 games to break down. We don't have any more time to waste. Let's go ahead and dive into the main slate. All right, kicking things off is a clash in the SEC that this game always seems to be closer than it should be. This is Kentucky taking on Georgia. The Dogs are a 20.5-point favorite with a game total of 48.5 points, meaning the implied score is about 34-14 in favor of Georgia. Now, I got to be honest, y'all, this Saturday slate is one where I am not having a hard time finding a player pool and cutting it down. And the reason why is because there are a lot of games where you can just take a big ol' X and take them all out of your player pool. There's also a lot of teams where you can take a big ol' X and take them all out of your player pool. Kentucky is one of those teams. I don't see how Kentucky is going to score a lot of points in this game. I don't see anybody that's rosterable in DFS except for one person. At the quarterback position, we don't know if it's going to be Cutter Boley or Zach Calzada. I'm not sure it matters. Neither of them are good. At the running back position, they do have Seth McGowan, who has been really, really good for Kentucky. He's been the primary engine of their offense, 3 straight games over 20 DraftKings points. However, the caveat is that no running back has topped 10 DraftKings points against Georgia all season long. So Seth McGowan, if he were to do so, would in fact be the first. So if he's the only rosterable player for Kentucky, it's not looking good for Kentucky. Now, on the Georgia side, I do think there are some guys that are worth playing and worth talking about. They've got Gunnar Stockton at quarterback. Now, I have kind of banged the drum for Gunnar Stockton. I played him a ton in that Bama game. He kind of let me down, but when you look at it, the stats weren't great, but they weren't awful from an efficiency standpoint. You just ended up with a situation where Alabama really controlled a lot of the clock, had a lot of time of possession. Stockton didn't account for a whole lot of touchdowns, and there you go. You end up with a poor DraftKings performance. But he does have upside. He's had 2 games this season over 34 DraftKings points. Georgia's implied to score 34 points in this one. He has done that in both games where Georgia scored over 40 points. So there's definitely a chance where Stockton could get you a big time upside game. I wish he were a little bit cheaper at 8,200, but he's certainly in play for me. At the running back position, I like Chauncey Bowens. So basically, Nate Frazier has been the top back for Georgia for kind of the last, I'd say 11 months, dating back to the end of last season. But Chauncey Bowens is now taking that spot because Nate Frazier cannot hold on to the football. He's literally like PD and Remember the Titans. And so Chauncey Bowens is now the running back 1, had a great game against Bama. 119 yards and a touchdown. Could that continue? I think there's a good chance it does. Also, do not forget about Josh McCray. He is the goal line back for this team. Could he just show up and vulture 2 touchdowns and instantly give you DraftKings value? Absolutely, he could. At the wide receiver position, if you're going to stack Gunnar Stockton, it's a really difficult task because they really do have a spread out target share, but they do have 2 guys that they prioritize over everybody else. It's Colby Young and Zachariah Branch. Zachariah Branch does lead the team in targets on the season with 22. That's 5.5 6.5 per game. Colt Young only has 20, which is 5 per game, but Colt Young has been a slight more consistent DraftKings point scorer. He has not hit 18 DraftKings points in a game, though, which is what he would need for 3 times value for his salary, which is really what we want. Whereas Zachariah Branch does have that 20 DraftKings points performance against Tennessee. So if I had to pick one, it would be Branch at cost. All right, game number 2. This is a fun one. Is Kansas State and Baylor. Current spread is Baylor minus 6.5 points with a game total of 61.5, meaning the implied total is about 34-27 in favor of the Baylor Bears. This is the only game on the slate where both teams are projected over 27 points. This is one of the highest totals on the entire slate. This is a game where you're going to want to be playing a lot of guys in fantasy because there are a lot of very interesting and fun options. Now, Baylor all season long has been victimized by 2 things. 1, deep passing. 2, inside running. Like if you're just willing to just run inside zone against Baylor, the middle of their defense is not very good, and you can run inside zone right at them, and you can have a lot of success running the ball. And what are the kind of the 2 things that Kansas State does well? Throwing deep and running the football. And so I think this is a really good matchup for the Kansas State offense. They've been a colossal disappointment so far this season, and it starts with Avery Johnson, who's only had 2 games over 22 DraftKings points. But this is where it should turn. This is going to be one of the worst defenses that he's played. He has a ton of rushing upside. We saw it last year. We saw it in 2023. He just has to do it. And this is a really good spot to do it because of how the Baylor defense is set up. Baylor's just not a good defensive team. They're going to have to score points to keep up. Avery Johnson is going to be the engine behind them scoring points. Speaking of which, they also get a new toy back in the offense, Dylan Edwards. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's probably because you watched the week 1 game in Dublin where he muffed a punt on his very first play and rolled his ankle and was not heard from ever again. Well, now he's back. He played in the UCF game, started 20 carries, 166 yards, scored a touchdown, 27.1 DraftKings points. That's the Dylan Edwards that we were expecting to see at the start of the season. He is an explosive player. It's what we saw when he was at Colorado. He also, in showing us that he carried 20 carries in games, shows us that he can be a workhorse back. This is a great spot for Dylan Edwards going up against Baylor defense that allows 201 rushing yards per game. He is one of the best running back plays on the entire slate, but he is also going to be one of the most popular running back plays on the entire slate. So just know that that's not a secret. Like people see this, people know us, people know who he is. He's going to be probably a very good play, but he's also going to be very popular. At the wide receiver position, Kansas State is really good to target at the wide receiver position because they are a very condensed target share ever since Jaron Bradley got hurt. Now, obviously, Bradley is questionable for this game. We don't know if he's going to come back. But if Bradley's out, you can expect the same condensed target shares that they've had the last few weeks. Jace Brown leads the entire slate with 41 targets through 4 games. Through 5 games. That is an average of 8.2 per game. And he has 3 games north of 20 DraftKings points when you include the FCS game. It's a really good spot for Jace Brown. Like I said, Baylor has been just a sieve defensively, so you're going to be able to carve him up however you want to carve him up. And I think that makes Jerron Tibbs an interesting pivot play as well. He's second on the teams with 31 targets, which is 6.2 per game. He has 2 games over 15 DraftKings points, and he's only $3,900. So that's like 2 games over 4X at $3,900. That's a great spot. I love playing this Kansas State side in this game, whether I'm getting exposure to the passing attack or the rushing attack. Now, Baylor's kind of the same way. That the problem we're going to run into with Baylor is they are such a good team in both facets of their offense that there's going to be some games where Sawyer Robertson in the passing offense comes through. There's going to be some games where Bryson Washington comes through. Are we going to really know which one? I don't really know. Like, it's just something that's going to be hard to predict as we go forward with the season. But I will tell you this. Every time we have seen Baylor slate, if you just stacked it up and you said, all right, I'm going to play 2 guys on Baylor. I'm going to play Sawyer Robertson and one of his receivers, and then I'm going to play 2 guys on the other team. If you've done that every single slate, you've probably ended up a pretty happy camper every single time, as long as you pick the right receiver. More on that in a little bit. But that's just because their games tend to turn into shootouts, and that's what I think is going to happen with this one as well, which is what makes Sawyer Robertson a very viable play. We've seen Sawyer Robertson have 2 games north of 38 DraftKings points this season, and he has 0 rushing upside. That is not easy to do, but he can do it because he's likely to hit that 300-yard bonus. He's likely to throw multiple touchdowns, which is what you want in a pocket passer. The problem is going to be stacking him, which we're going to talk about in a second. The running back position for Baylor, they've got one of the best workhorse running backs on the slate. It's Bryson Washington. Now, he was a big-time dud against Baylor, which bottom line, if I could say this just about the Week 5 slate in general, I had a great Week 5 main slate, and it was because I had Jeremiah Love and Mekhi Lemon as core plays, those were guys that you had to have in your lineup if you wanted to win any money, because they were so good and they were so better than the players that were expensive around them that you just had to have them, and you could not afford to lose ground to anybody by not having them. So it was a good main slate for us because of that. Bryson Washington's a guy that I played in some of my lineups that didn't have Jeremiah Love, and those lineups suffered because of it. He had 10 carries, 77 yards, and a touchdown, but he did that in like a half of action because he did get hurt and leave the game. So you got to kind of put a little asterisk on that. But Bryson Washington's a guy that we saw score 50 DraftKings points in a game last year. Kansas State is allowing 211 rushing yards per game. So this is also a good spot for Bryson Washington, as it is for Sawyer Robertson. So you're just going to have to pick and choose. Do I want to target the Baylor run game? Do I want to target the Baylor pass game? I think they're both in play here on this slate. Now, at the wide receiver position, Baylor has 5 players who are currently averaging double-digit fantasy points. That's insane. It's utterly insane. 4 receivers and a tight end. Because they play offense so fast, because they have so many offensive plays, they're able to use all these guys where they can still score a lot of fantasy points. Now, also, even more impressive is that 4 of those 5, everybody except Kobe Prentice, is averaging more than 6 targets per game. Josh Cameron's the leader at 7.8, Michael Trigg 7, Ashton Hawkins 6.2, and then Cole Wilson 6 even. So you're just seeing a ton of guys score a lot of points here for this Baylor offense. And the guy I think I would be partial to is Josh Cameron. He does have the highest single game performance of any Baylor receiver so far this season, 38.1 against SMU. He does lead the team in targets. He is this team's alpha wide receiver. He's the guy that I would want to target, but also at the same time, you got Cole Wilson and Kobe Prentice down there very cheap, and they're certainly very tempting as well. So I think probably if I had to rank it, I'd probably go Cameron 1, Wilson 2, and then after that, I don't really know. I think it gets ranked after that. Next up, we've got a big battle in the Big 12 between Iowa State and Cincinnati. Cincinnati is 1.5-point favorites with a game total of 53.5 points. I got to be honest, I was a little surprised when I saw that spread and saw that Cincinnati was favored. I thought the national perception on Iowa State was improving a little bit. However, Iowa State dealing with some injuries. Also, I don't know if they're the best matchup for Cincinnati. More on that in a second. And so the game total was 27-26 in favor of Cincinnati. That makes this a fairly good game to stack. However, the way Iowa plays does not lend itself into a whole lot of shootouts taking place. Iowa State is an offense that has not generated a whole lot of explosive plays. Iowa State is a defense that very much is willing to trade off. We're going to give you yardage, but we're not going to give you explosive plays, because they run a lot of 3 high safeties. They run a lot of very deep zones where they're just willing to let you throw underneath, willing to let you have an extra number in the run game, but we're going to make tackles in space. We are going to not let you break off explosive plays, which again leads to games tending not to shoot out in nuclear fashion. So is this a game you want to stack? Probably not. However, are there a ton of appealing fantasy options from this game? Absolutely. Rocco Beck is only $6,100, and he's been over 22 DraftKings points in 3 of the 4 games this season. That's just an insane stat for that price tag. You know he's going to have to throw. Cincinnati's allowing 320 passing yards a game. We just saw them give up over 400 passing yards to Jaylon Daniels. It's a pretty good spot for Rocco Beck, but there's one issue with him. Now, at the running back position, I'm a hard pass on both these running backs. We have seen Carson Hansen really expand as the RB1 over Abu Sama, but Carson Hansen, not an explosive player, 73 carries through 4 games, and he has one of them longer than 15 yards. That is not great, bub. The upside with him, though, is that he is a great goal line back. So could he end up scoring 2-3 touchdowns like he did against Arizona? Absolutely. But I think there's better plays on the slate. At the wide receiver position, this is where it gets really hard to play Rocco Beck, y'all, because they're just so spread out in terms of their targets. They've really been throwing to the 2 tight ends, Burkle and Brahmer, more than their wide receivers. No player has more than 20 targets on the season for this team. But at the start of the year, y'all remember all those best ball drafts over the summer? Who were we drafting? We were drafting Chase Sowell because we thought that he could become the new Jaden Higgins for this offense. Didn't look like it through 3 weeks, but against Arizona, 4 catches, 146 yards, team high for the season among all wide receivers, 21.6 DraftKings points. Could this happen again? I mean, possibly. He's only $3,200, so you're not having to pay a whole lot to find out. And what if it does, especially if you stack him with Becht, right? There's definitely a chance that he could hit it big. Am I saying it's going to happen? No, because they could just absolutely go back to playing the other wide receivers. But there's a chance. and I'm going to take that chance at only $3,200. Now let's talk about the Cincinnati side. So last week, Brendan Sorsby was a core play for me. This week, Brendan Sorsby might also still be a core play for me. He is still a value at his cost on DraftKings because he's only $6,800, and he's hit 4x salary for that in his last 3 games, over 38 or over 31 DraftKings points, in his last 3 games. He also has a ton of rushing upside. He ran for almost 100 yards against Nebraska, has 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. What he does well is exactly what Iowa State is going to allow you to do. They're going to allow you to run quarterback run game. They're going to allow you to dink and dunk down the field. This is a recipe for success for Sorsby. It might not turn into a whole lot of touchdowns, but he definitely has an opportunity to put up a whole lot of yards in this game to this Iowa State team. Now, at the running back position, Brendan Sorsby is the leading rusher for this team on the season, right? But Tawee Walker really did turn in 2 straight good performances, really good against Kansas, where he carried the ball 18 times for 73 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I'm absolutely willing to go back to him, but I think I would rather just play Sorsby. Like, I'm willing to put Tawee Walker in my pool. Like I said, there's a lot of cross-offs on this slate. He's not a cross-off, but I'd rather just play Sorsby. And at the wide receiver position, you got a really easy stacking partner for Sorsby. It's Cyrus Allen. He's a transfer from Texas A&M who has been double-digit fantasy points in every single game. He's the leader for the team on the season, 27 so far through 4 games. That's 6.75 per game. Season high for a Cincinnati wide receiver in terms of DraftKings points in a single game, 38.8 against Kansas, caught 11 passes, targeted 14 times. So he's just really solid option. He's only $5,700. A Sorsby Allen stack. We had it in the core last week. It worked great for us. We're going to go back to the well because, again, I think what Cincinnati does offensively really plays into the hands to what Iowa State allows defensively. All right, we are 3 games in. We're going to go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we're going to pick it up from there. All right, before we continue, I do want to mention there are a few places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out. And I'm also tweeting all updates for the show on there as well. So if you want to keep up with what we're doing, that's one place you can stay in the know. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. Basically, if you're looking for a community of people to talk DFS with, it's a bunch of really good, really smart people. Head on over to the Fantasy Corner Discord. College football is one of the sports that we're always talking in there, talking lineups, talking strategy, talking plays. There's a few people who are really in tune with injuries and posting it. So that way we all know it's just a great place to be. And if you're really just looking for people to talk college football DFS with, I cannot recommend it enough. Also, if you want to know who actually makes my college football DFS lineups, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. Every single college football DFS slate, I post my core plays as well as a write-up why they are my core plays. And so if you want access to that, you can head on over to the Patreon and get it. Now, I can't just sit here and guarantee that you're going to win thousands of dollars by plugging in those guys. It's not that easy. But what I can guarantee is that you can get well-researched, well-thought-out information from somebody who knows what they're doing, knows what they're talking about, and help you get better at college football DFS. All right, now let's go ahead and carry on now with the next game, which is Clemson taking on North Carolina. Short little bus ride up for Clemson. Clemson is 14.5-point favorites with a game total 46.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 30-16 in favor of the Tigers. I gotta say, that feels off to me. I know Clemson's been bad, y'all. I know they've been like probably the most disappointing team in the nation, but North Carolina is a dumpster fire. Clemson still has a lot of guys from a team that went to the college football playoff. I feel like they cover that spread easily. I just think that there's a gap between these two teams. Now, granted, could Clemson continue their tail slide and continue to disappoint? Absolutely. Could North Carolina start to figure things out? Absolutely. But I think there's a gap between these two teams. And I think it starts at the quarterback position. Cade Klubnik, quarterback for Clemson, has not been great this season. Not great at all, but he was great last season, and he's scored 28 DraftKings points against Syracuse in his last game. Now, he needed 60 throws to do it, but he got there. And North Carolina allows 252 passing yards a game, and they've played one competent quarterback. It was Josh Hoover at TCU, and he lit him up. So I do think that this is a good kind of get-right spot for Cade Klubnik, and I think that he is going to be able to turn in a good game here in this one. Now, the guy that I really like from the Clemson offense is Adam Randall. Now, I'm not alone in this. A lot of people are going to like Adam Randall this week. But first off, he's already played 4 games and had 2 games over 25 DraftKings points. That's what we really like to see, especially when the salary is $6,600. But what we love is the fact that he is the workhorse running back. 57 carries so far this season, as well as 13 catches out of the backfield. The next highest running back on the team. has 3 carries. They leave him on the field pretty much the entire game. And so if we think the Clemson offense has success, he's going to be tied to it. When you think back to Clemson running backs, you think back to Phil Maffa, you think back to Will Shipley in recent years, Travis Etienne a little further back. Think about how much you were paying on DraftKings for those guys. And Adam Randall's only 6,600. He has the same role. The offense just isn't as successful yet so far this season. So I think it's a great buy early spot for Adam Randall, and I'm certainly going to be on him. At the wide receiver position, this is where it gets dicey for Clemson. So Antonio Williams came back from injury in the Syracuse game, and we saw a really interesting scenario where 3 receivers were targeted a ton in that game. Like I said, they threw the ball 60 times. In that game, which is the only game we have for a sample size where Antonio Williams played, Antonio Williams, worth noting, low A-dot slot guy, probably a pretty good matchup going up against the Steve Belichick cover 3. Bryant Wesco Jr., deep downfield target, probably a pretty good matchup going up against the Steve Belichick cover 3. I think those 2 guys are worth a good look. But again, I kind of started a tangent there or started the sentence there and went off on a tangent. In the Syracuse game, TJ Moore, 17 targets. Bryant Wesco, 10 targets. Antonio Williams, 9. So a ton of targets for those 3 guys. Super condensed passing offense. You don't need to consider everybody else. But if you're going to be stacking Klubnik, you got to get it right. And I like Wesco. Wesco's been their best receiver all year. 3 straight games over 25 DraftKings points. He's great. I think he's the guy for this offense. And he's the guy that I'm going to be willing to be targeting for my Klubnik stacks. Now on the North Carolina side, this is a team I wouldn't be mad at you if you just crossed off, honestly. Unknown who's going to be the starter. Gio Lopez is the guy, but he's hurt. Max Johnson's like the same age as Bill Belichick's girlfriend. He's the backup. He might play. He's not mobile, not a whole lot of upside. Lopez might have a little bit of upside if he plays because he is, in fact, mobile. The running back position, they do have kind of a workhorse in Demon June. I think it's Demon. 26 DraftKings points against Richmond, followed up by leading the team in carries against UCF, but he only turned it into 8.8. But he is the guy you want in the backfield. He's only $5,100. The wide receiver position, we definitely want Jordan Shipp. He's the guy we would want to target, but not consistent production, but he's 3,300. Next up, we got Illinois taking on Purdue. This is an interesting spot. Illinois is 9.5-point favorites with a game total of 57.5 points, meaning the implied score is about 33-24 in favor of the Illini. Now, on the Illinois side, Luke Altmaier had a career high of 40 DraftKings points against USC last week. It was the only game he's had above 25 DraftKings points this season, which is notable because it would be 3 times value for his salary. Purdue ranks in the middle of the pack in the NCAA or in the FBS in terms of passing yards allowed. I don't really think it's a great matchup, but it's far from a bad one. It's definitely in the Big Ten. It's an above average matchup. But what you're paying for right now is Luke Altmaier on DraftKings is priced up for the last game he played against USC. I don't think it's likely he gets to that again. And I think he's a little overpriced. There's other guys I'd rather get to. At the running back position, Caden Fegan clearly operated as the running back 1 against USC. 14 carries used in the passing game, scored a receiving touchdown. His only game above, well, actually, I take that back. Against Western Michigan, he also put up 3 times value. So he has 2 games over 20 DraftKings points so far this season. That's not a bad rate for Fegan. Now, at the wide receiver position, this is I think they continue to keep mispricing this guy on DraftKings. It's Hank Beatty. He is the team target leader on the season, 32 targets through 5 games. That's about 6.4 per game. 4 games over 17 DraftKings points, which is about what we want to see for that 3x value for his salary. So really, really solid option, super consistent role, super consistent usage. I think you can play him without Altmaier and feel pretty good about it. And don't sleep on Colin Dixon. He's second on the team in targets with 22 on the season. There's a lot of like cheap receivers that I'm going to be willing to throw darts at here on this slate. He's one of them at $3,300. Now let's head on over to the Purdue side. So for Purdue, Ryan Brown has been between 18 and 30 DraftKings points in every single game so far this season. He's pretty mobile. We just saw the Illinois secondary. They're really banged up. They really got issues. And Mekhi Lemon looked great against them. Jaden Mayava, the quarterback, looked great against them. Ryan Brown, dual threat, 6,600. I'm willing to go back to him. I think he's worth a look at 6,600. The running back position, they got Devin Mockabee. I like Mockabee because he's one of the last true workhorse running backs in all of college football. He does not come off the field. He does have usage in the passing game. You just don't really know how Purdue's offense is going to operate. When Purdue's offense has success, Maccabee is great. When they're not having success, he's not the best option. Really got to make sure I enunciate success. Now, at the wide receiver position, Michael Jackson III, no relation to the other Michael Jackson, is the wide receiver one, team leader in targets, 23 on the season, 3 games of double-digit DraftKings points. He's another one of those receivers like Colin Dixon that's priced really low, and I'm going to take a shot at. He's going to make my pool. Now, this next one I'm about to talk about, I think you can entirely cross off. It is Wisconsin taking on Michigan. It's going to be one of the ugliest games of the day. Michigan's 16.5-point favorites with a game total of 42.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 29-13 in favor of the Wolverines. Now, for Wisconsin, the bad news starts with their quarterback injuries. Billy Edwards Jr., questionable. This offense is crap without him. The running back position, Dylan Jones, questionable. Makes Dupree somewhat interesting. The wide receiver position, Trent Kahuna, Vinny Anthony, they're like the volume hogs. They're big play guys, but they're not getting anything if Billy Edwards isn't playing. Danny O'Neal and whoever the other backup is, I don't even know his name. They just haven't been good. I'm not messing with it. Michigan, I like Bryce Underwood in this game because Wisconsin's secondary is garbage, but they don't ask him to do a whole lot. He doesn't have games with a whole lot of passing attempts. He doesn't throw deep down the field a lot. The last 2 games, they have opened him up as a runner, scoring at least 12 DraftKings points with his legs in both games. But I just think this game environment isn't going to give him enough upside to really do a whole lot. The guy I do like for Michigan, though, is Justice Haynes at running back. Been super consistent this year, over 22 DraftKings points every single game. Score a touchdown every single game. Love Haynes in this spot. Wisconsin, not a good defense. It's a good spot for him. The wide receiver position, I mean, look, y'all, it's Memphis, or I'm sorry, it's Michigan. Y'all, how many times in the history of the show have I confused Memphis and Michigan live? It's happened a ton. So, Michigan, Donovan McCulley's their wide receiver one. He's only $3,200. There's worse plays. I like, maybe. All right, next up, we've got a fun game. Oklahoma State taking on Arizona. Well, actually, I don't know, not so fun. It's a lot of points, high spread. Arizona's 19.5-point favorites with a game total of 55.5, meaning the implied total is about 37-18 in favor of Arizona. For Oklahoma State, I'm going to keep it short, keep it simple. The only playable guys in DraftKings are their running backs. Rodney Fields only had 5 carries against Baylor, but he caught 13 passes in the last 2 games. That's not nothing, especially in a PPR format on DraftKings. Trent Howland looked like the guy against Baylor, 16 carries, 24.3 DraftKings points. He did not play against Tulsa the previous week, so you could call this situation a little unpredictable, but it looks like Howland is the guy, and it looks like Fields is going to have a pass-catching role. Now, on the Arizona side, Noah Fafita is just an interesting guy because I can't figure out what to do with him on any given slate. He has 1 game this season over 3x value for his current salary, though, and it was against an FCS opponent, Weber State. I don't like how expensive he is. It's a hard pass for me. The running back position, Ismail Mahdi's turning into a workhorse running back as long as Kedrick Riscano has been out. But guess what? Riscano's been out. I don't know what's going to happen here. Even though Oklahoma State's run defense is absolutely putrid, if they're splitting carries, it limits their upside. The wide receiver position, it's tough to figure out because the usage continues to change. It's not like last year or even 2 years ago where we just had Tet McMillan and that was the guy and you just play him. Haven't had that. Chris Hudson led the team in targets and receptions last week. Jamin Watley had the huge game against Weber State. Hasn't been noisy ever since. All right, next up, we have got Notre Dame taking on Boise State in a fun non-conference game here. Notre Dame's 20.5-point favorites with a game total of 63.5, meaning the implied score is about 42-21 in favor of Notre Dame. That gives Notre Dame the highest team total on this slate. Now, let me kind of go off on a rant here. Let me kind of tell you guys a little bit about advanced analytics, right? So Notre Dame is in a position where they need to win out to even have a chance at the college football playoff. What they also need to do is they need to leave a lasting impression to a committee that they are, in fact, one of the 12 best teams in the nation. And one way they can do that is by skewing their advanced analytics, right? The way advanced analytics work is advanced analytics have to take into account margin of victory because they always want the biggest sample size possible. So they're going to use the whole game, right? So if you continue to score points throughout the entirety of a football game to increase the margin of victory and increase how you have the edge in the advanced analytics, then you're going to come out positive on the other end in terms of how the analytics favor your team. Teams do this in college basketball all the time, where they'll schedule a bad opponent, but they'll go out and beat them by like 70 because it'll skew their analytics, because the analytics will take into account the fact that they won that game by 70 points when in actuality the game was over when it got to 30, right? Notre Dame is going to put it on teams as long as they can put it on them the rest of the season, because they want the analytics as well as just the plain old eye test to favor them as much as they possibly can. So what you're going to see here in this one is Notre Dame is going to score a lot of points. The question is Boise going to be able to match it? Well, Notre Dame has a defense that runs a lot of man coverage and has been victimized this season by teams who have receivers that can get open against man coverage. Like you think about Miami with Malachi Toney, you think about Texas A&M with Concepcion and Craver. I don't think Boise has that guy. Max Matson is the quarterback. He's not bad, especially considering his price tag. He's going to be throwing a lot, but I don't know. I just think there's better options out there. I'd rather play Sorsby for $600 more. I'd rather play Rocco Becht at a similar price. The running back position, Boise has a committee. John Riley, though, is the guy I mentioned. 60 DraftKings points in a game against Air Force, kind of out of nowhere. 35 carries in the last two games. It appears he's the workhorse, but Notre Dame really hasn't let a running back have a really efficient game. The running back that had a good game against him was Le'Veon Moss, and he just fell into the end zone 3 times. The wide receiver position, this is where Boise would really need to win in order to stand a chance against Notre Dame. They've got Caples, Lauder, and Marshall as their top 3 target earners. And Marshall is the big play threat, only 3,600. All right, so that kind of does it. Advanced analytics rant on Notre Dame. Like I said, high school math teachers sometimes understand how statistical concepts work, right? Because the whole point is getting a big sample size. That's why they take the whole game into account. Anyway, Notre Dame, CJ Carr's their quarterback. He's only hit 3 times value for his current salary once this season. It was against Arkansas. But they have a 42-point implied total. He has as much touchdown upside as any quarterback on the slate, but this is not a team that wants to win by throwing. They want to win by running. It would be super contrarian to play Carr, though, because a ton of people, myself included, are going to go right back to Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love is now coming off of 3 straight 30 fantasy point performances against Texas A&M, Purdue, and Arkansas. He's one of the best offensive players in the entire country. He gets used in the passing game. He is an explosive play waiting to happen. He's great. He's absolutely great. He's worth every penny of his price tag, and I'm going to find a way to be fitting him into lineups. Now, I do think it's going to be a little bit cheeky this week to play Jadarian Price, a guy who has had 3 straight games of 18 DraftKings points or more, which is no slouch for a guy at $5,800. But here's the most important part. Both of these guys' upside is tied into touchdowns. They have as much touchdown equity as anybody, considering their team total at 42 and how much they love to run the football. These 2 running backs have combined for 12 total touchdowns in the last 2 games. Do y'all realize how absurd that is? That is 6 running back touchdowns per game through 2 weeks. That means on average that they are scoring 3 each in the last 2 weeks. That is utterly insane. They could absolutely do it again. They're both going to make my player pool. At the wide receiver position, Jordan Faison leads the team in targets on the season with 26. $4,900 is a pretty reasonable price tag in my book for a guy with that profile. But the guy I like the best is Malachi Fields. He's the guy most likely to break off an explosive play. Second on the team with 21 targets, 3 games of double-digit DraftKings points, and he's only $3,800. What I really like, though, is that, like I said, I think he's most likely for an explosive. He has catches of 40 and 66 yards this season. And Boise gave up the explosives a lot the last time we saw them in the national spotlight against South Florida. If they don't have that fixed, Malachi Fields is probably going to catch a bomb on them. All right, we got 4 games left. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we'll finish it up from there. All right, now before we finish up, guys, I do want to mention if this video is helping you out, please hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Please rate and review if you are listening on audio. I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate when you guys do that and how much it helps me and how much it helps the channel when you do. So if I'm helping you at all, please help me out in return by hitting that like button, rating, and reviewing. I appreciate it. All right, let's now talk about could be considered the game of the day, which if you told me this a year ago that this was going to be the game of the day, I probably would have laughed at you, right? But it's Vanderbilt taking on Alabama. The funniest thing ever would be for Vanderbilt to win this game and then say the only place in the SEC where it's easy to play is Alabama. That would be utterly hysterical. Anyway, Alabama is 10.5-point favorites, game total of 55.5 points, meaning the implied total is about, I did my math wrong on my notes here. Hold on. 33-22 in favor of Alabama. There we go. Mental math. I think I got that right. Anyway, for Vanderbilt, they've got Diego Pavia. Diego Pavia. If you were in the Fantasy Corner Discord 2 years ago, we had a slogan like every Tuesday or Wednesday night when Conference USA games were on, you just play Diego Pavia no matter what, right? Well, now he's at Vanderbilt. And he's been pretty good, and he's very mobile. And Alabama, though, in the Kalen DeBoer era, has really struggled against mobile quarterbacks. They just really have struggled against them. You think the Michigan game, you think the Oklahoma game last year against Jackson Arnold, the Alabama game against Diego Pavia, the Tennessee game against Nico. Like in the Kalen DeBoer era, the Florida State game against Tommy Castellanos. In the Kalen DeBoer era, mobile quarterbacks have killed them. Will it be the case this week? Knowing what happened last year, knowing that this is a huge game, I don't know. But I'm willing to pay that price tag to find out, right? I'm willing to pay $7,100 for Diego Pavia to see if he could have one of these big mobile quarterback games against Alabama. Now, at the running back position, Vanderbilt does have a workhorse. It's Cedric Alexander. He's their primary guy. Has 3 games over 17 DraftKings points so far this season. It's no slouch. However, Alabama's only allowed one running back to top 12 DraftKings points against him all season long. It was Chauncey Bowens last week for Georgia. For Vanderbilt, they're kind of frustrating to target from a receiver perspective. Stowers, Sherrill, and Richardson are all fairly similar target shares. They're all playable to me. Stowers would probably be the guy I would go with. He's a tight end. He's a mismatch. And the way that Vanderbilt is probably going to win this game is probably by utilizing zone read, RPO, play action, which to me would mean it could be a Stowers game. When they get the tight end involved in the RPO games, they get the tight end involved in play action. To me, thinking about it from an X's and O's perspective, Stowers would probably be the guy that I would be looking for. All right, now on the Alabama side, Ty Simpson, ever since everybody said that he sucked after week 1 against Florida State because he was truly dreadful in that game, it was the first time we'd really seen him. He's been outstanding. 26 DraftKings points in every single game. Looked the part against Georgia. I think he's really trending in the right direction. This is a really good offensive scheme with Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer. $7,300. This Vanderbilt defense is untested by a passing offense, the likes of which for Alabama. So I'm willing to roll the dice on Simpson, and I'm willing to roll the dice on a game stack of this game as well, and hoping for a crazy shootout like we got last year. The running back position, people are going to like Jam Miller this week. I don't get it. Alabama has not been able to run the football all season long. They've struggled with it. Getting Jam Miller back isn't going to help the problem that they just don't have a good run blocking offensive line. The wide receiver position, I tried to tell y'all about Ryan Williams, and it's no hate towards Ryan Williams. He's a super talented player, but he's super inconsistent, super erratic, and he has only one good game so far this season. And if you want to pay $8,100 to try to capture another one of those good games, knock yourself out. But I'm going to play Jeremy Bernard, who's been the wide receiver one, been the most targeted wide receiver for this team so far this season. 19 targets, 16 DraftKings points in every single game, over 20 in 3 of them. This is the profile we like. This is the guy that can beat Vanderbilt, because what I think Vanderbilt's going to do is really force Alabama to throw in the intermediate area of the field. It's what Georgia did, and Georgia almost got enough stops by doing it. But I think Jeremy Barnes, the guy that Alabama targets in that situation, he's my guy at $6,900 for this team. Isaiah Horton's the wide receiver 3. He's not bad, but I want him to be a little bit cheaper for his profile. All right, next game up, we have got my Texas Longhorns. I'm not even going to try to hide that I'm biased here, y'all. It's my Texas Longhorns. You're watching on YouTube, you can see the shirt. Texas is 6.5-point favorites with a game total of 41.5, meaning the implied score is about 24-17 in favor of the Longhorns. Y'all, I got to be honest. I don't know if this is my bias speaking as a Texas fan. I feel like somehow people are sleeping on the University of Texas, which never happens. Texas like eternally gets overrated by everybody because we're Texas, right? We're the big dogs. We're the marquee name, the big time program. But right now people are sleeping on Texas. And it's all because they didn't look good against Ohio State. Arch Manning did not look good against Ohio State. They've been kind of out of sight, out of mind playing a, typical SEC non-conference schedule since then with 3 G5 opponents all at home with varying levels of impressiveness in their wins. I think people are forgetting how good this Texas team is. And we're not acknowledging the fact that, Ohio State is really good. It was Arch Manning's first road start. Like, that's not an easy situation to come into. Ohio State's probably the favorite to win the national championship. And Florida is a team that has won one game, and it's not against an FCS or not against an FBS opponent. I think that spread's a little off. I think Texas is able to handle Florida quite easily. And I don't think anybody is going to play Arch Manning in DFS, which to me makes him a very appealing play. He's $9,000, which is straight up too expensive. But against San Jose State, 35 DraftKings points. Against Sam Houston, 40 DraftKings points. Has a ton of rushing upside. Has rushed for a touchdown in 3 straight games. Florida's defense, I don't think is great. Quinn Ewers threw 5 touchdowns against Florida last year. Nobody's going to play Arch Manning. And if you think it's because the cost is bad, I agree. I think he's low overpriced. I think that's just going to keep his ownership down. And in DFS, sometimes what is on paper a bad play becomes a good play when nobody plays them and they go off. Arch Manning could absolutely do that here in this one. I think this spread's a little off. I think Texas rolls, and I think a big part of that is Arch Manning. Now, the running back position. Now, when I first started this show 3 years ago, 2022 season, Bijan Robinson was still the Texas running back, right? After that, you had Jonathan Brooks. Last year, we had Wisner and Blue. Every year, playing the running back in the Steve Sarkisian system was just cheat code in DFS, right? Right now, this is a mess. Quintravion Wisner, it's questionable. CJ Baxter, doubtful. Last week, they both missed. Gibson and Clark, committee. If one of Wisner or Baxter plays, I think they're a good look. So Wisner, if he plays, I think is worth a shot. But other than that, this is a mess. I'm not avoiding it. The wide receiver position, this position has probably been the most disappointing for Texas. Like, everybody was really down on the Texas offensive line to enter the season, and they've actually been pretty good, in my opinion, from what I've seen. The wide receiver position's been the letdown. They do not have a Matthew Golden or an Xavier Worthy or an Adonai Mitchell in this group. At least not yet. These guys might develop into that, but they're not there yet. Anyway, what you have so far this season is Ryan Wingo has been by far the most targeted wide receiver, but he hadn't turned it into any kind of successful game until the Sam Houston game, 28 DraftKings points. Is that the start of something for Ryan Wingo? Maybe. I held the contention ever since the preseason that Ryan Wingo is the exact type of wide receiver one that Arch Manning needs because of the routes that Ryan Wingo runs well and the routes that Arch Manning throws well. Could this be the start of something? Possibly, but you have to pay a whole lot to find out. Parker Livingstone is probably the second best receiver on this team to this point in the season, but it's been because of Emmett Mosley being hurt this he's had a lot of opportunity, which, by the way, I do have to apologize. The last time that Texas was on the slate, I did the analysis thing that so many people do, and I incorrectly labeled Parker Livingstone as a slot receiver. He is not a slot receiver. Sark moves his wide receivers around. Parker Livingstone plays just a little bit in the slot, but he plays primarily on the outside. I did the thing where I looked at Parker Livingstone, and I'm like, you know what? His comp is Julian Edelman, if you get what I'm saying. And so he does play from the slot a little bit. He has taken snaps at the slot, but he is technically a starting outside receiver. If Emmett Mosley continues to be out and Livingstone continues to have that role, I'm going to continue to go back to him at only a salary of $4,300. But if Mosley's back in, that throws an entirely different dynamic into this receiver room that makes all of them hard to target. All right, Florida, look, no player on this team can be considered draftable, in my opinion. They've not topped 16 points against an FBS opponent. They've only produced 2 games of 3x value among anybody on their roster against FBS opponents this season. Jaden Ball has done it once. Eugene Wilson has done it once. Texas's defense is by far the best that they've played, and Texas has only allowed 1 GPP viable score all season, which was Carnell Tate in week 1. Texas is one of the best defenses in college football. The Florida offense has been stuck in the mud. This is an absolutely untargetable situation, in my opinion. Next up, we've got Virginia taking on Louisville. Louisville is 6.5-point favorites with a game total of 62.5 points, meaning the implied score is about 34-28 in favor of the Cardinals. I think that this line should be closer than that, but I'm not going to bet it because this game has a wide range of outcomes, right? For Virginia, Chandler Morris has been great. And he's underpriced on DraftKings. Like, he has 2 straight games of 37 DraftKings points. He showed a ton of rushing upside in both those games. Huge upset over FSU that he pulled off. I think he's really good. I like his game. I think he's fun to watch. And Louisville is kind of untested so far in terms of what they've seen from the quarterback position. So I like Chandler Morris a lot. He's going to make the player pool. The running back position, we've got Jamari Taylor. He has separated himself from the rest of the pack as the best of the Virginia running backs. He had 27 total carries in the game against FSU. The other backs combined for 13. What you've now seen is the two close games that Virginia has played against FSU and against NC State. He has been the workhorse running back. He has been the guy. He's put up 20 DraftKings points in one of them and 39 in the other. But now he's $6,900. It's like DraftKings knew where I was going with this, right? It's a great situation for him. We don't know what Louisville's run defense really has, but $6,900 is a lot to find out. The wide receiver position, Trell Harris leads the team in targets narrowly. Cam Ross and Jamal Adrien are not close or not far behind at all. Harris has turned in one GPP viable performance. Cam Ross has as well. Adrien has not had a breakout game because he has a low ADOT and a low TD rate, but all three of these guys are cheap. All three of these guys are certainly eligible stacking partners if you are playing lines with Chandler Morris, which I will be. On the Louisville side, Miller Moss is coming off of his best game in the last 2 seasons, scored 32 DraftKings points against Pitt. Big reason why is because Louisville fell down early in that game, and they had to throw. They had to throw a ton. Threw the ball 51 times. I don't see that happening here. He has no rushing upside. He's $7,900. I think the pendulum swung too far. Like, he was very cheap last week. He's now way too expensive this week coming off the good game. He's going to be a pass for me. At the running back position, the top 2 running backs, Isaac Brown and Duke Watson, are expected to be back and healthy for this game, as they were for the Pitt game, but neither of them was effective. It was a 50-50 split. Neither of them was very good. They abandoned the run early. Isaac Brown's a guy that I love, but I don't really know if I'm going to get to him here on this slate. I think that it could be one of those bad play, good play type of things with Isaac Brown, where nobody's going to play him, but, man, he could break a slate. He could really break a slate. We saw this last year. So I don't know. That's going to be a tough decision for me, is do I want to take that chance? And because it's going to be a low ownership. And yeah. All right. Anyway, the wide receiver position, super condensed target tree. If you're playing Miller Moss, you don't have any mystery in who to stack with. Bell and Lacey both combined for 28 targets against Pitt, which is just an insane number. Both average more than 7 a game to this point. It's highly unlikely that let me rephrase. It's highly likely that what you see is one of them has a huge game and one of them has a dud, or they both have just solid above average games. I think they're both worth a look. They average 32 DraftKings points a game combined. If you're playing Miller Moss, you got to play one of these guys with them. If not 2 of them, I think playing a double stack is viable. Next up, last game of the day, we've got Penn State taking on UCLA. Penn State is 25.5-point favorites, game total of 58.5 points, meaning the implied score is about 37-12 in favor of Penn State. You guys who are long-term listeners know Drew Aller. I think he's a good NFL prospect. I think he might have a good NFL career, and you think he has Justin Herbert and Josh Allen to thank for that. But in college football DFS, I don't play the guy. He's $8,500. He never throws the ball a whole lot. He doesn't run the ball a whole lot. He's priced up because his name's Drew Aller. And what has he done to be priced up that high? He hasn't thrown over 250 passing yards in a game since USC last season. That's a calendar year ago. This time last year, I only had 1 kid. I have 2 now. Literally, I've had a kid born in the time that he's thrown for 250 yards. It's crazy. Not playing him. 8,500 is way too expensive. Not doing it. At the running back position, we've got Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. It's a 50-50 committee. We know this. It's been that way for their entire careers. They have not had a single game over 25 DraftKings points so far this season. And they combined for 32.9 per game. So, when you start thinking about the math, right? It's really hard for one of them to have a big game unless they just happen to go nuclear, happen to capture the touchdowns. This is also a really bad defense in UCLA. And also, Katron Allen has been more efficient than Singleton this year, been more effective, breaks more tackles, better yards per carry, $5,700. I think he's worth a look. I'm not going to play Singleton, but I think Allen, to get the same amount of carries at what's been better production this season at a $2,700 price cut, yeah, I'm going to take a chance on that. The wide receiver position, we let me think the best way to phrase this. We hated on the Penn State receivers all last year. They went in the portal. They got 3 guys that they felt pretty good about. The first few weeks of the season, they looked pretty good. They didn't really do anything special against Oregon. They've got 3 guys that are averaging between 5 and 6 targets a game, and none of them are giving any huge scores because the team doesn't pass the ball a whole lot. The target shares are spread out among those 3 guys. It's just not a situation I'm going to play. Just not doing it. Just not doing it. Speaking of things I'm not doing, is playing a guy on UCLA. Y'all, it's this team's an absolute dumpster fire. They are winless. They fired their head coach. They fired their OC. It's just Nico out there running around trying to make things happen against a really good Penn State defense. Not doing it. Hard pass. Anyways, that's going to do it here for this slate, guys. Like I said, I think this is a really fun slate, but I think it's a slate where it's really easy to cross off a lot of people. And so this is a slate where I'm probably going to have a small player pool, but I'm probably going to get a lot of combinations of that player pool. And I'm going to be looking to combine them in unique ways. So that way I'm not on all the chalk in any of my individual lineups. And that's going to be my general strategy this week. But if you want to know who makes the core plays, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/Mike'sMoneyPicks. If you want more from me, remember, follow me on Twitter, join the Fantasy Corner Discord, available in both those locations. And that's going to do it here for this slate, y'all. If this video helps you out, make sure you hit the like button. On YouTube. Make sure you rate and review the audio. It really does help me out a ton when you guys do that. And I appreciate you guys sticking around here and watching to the end. Like I said earlier, live show is going to be Friday night this week. So make sure you're subscribed. You can be here for that. We're going to have a Saturday night slate video coming out probably Thursday night. We'll see on the timing of that, but probably Thursday night. But yeah, super fun week 6 slate, y'all. Really excited. Really looking forward to it. So yeah, hopefully we're able to give you guys all the information you need in order to build some winning lineups here for this slate. But that's going to do it for us here, y'all. Thank y'all for watching and listening to this point. Best of luck to you guys in the week 6 slate, and I will see everybody next time. Hook 'em.